Hey, Jake Harper here again. Moving into Joshua chapter 11, verses 1 through 6. Let me read that to you. And it came to pass when Jabin, king of Hazor, heard these things, that he sent to Jobab, king of Madon, to the king of Shimron, and to the king of Achsaph, and to the kings who were from the north in the mountains, in the plains south of Kinnerot, in the lowland, and in the heights of Dor on the west, to the Canaanites in the east and in the west, the Amorite, the Hittite, the Perizzite, the Jebusite, in the mountains, and the Hivite below Hermon, in the land of Mizpah. So they went out, they and all their armies, with them as many as people, as the sand that is on the seashore in multitude, with very many horses and chariots. When all these kings had met together, they came and camped together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. But Yahweh said to Joshua, Do not be afraid because of them, for tomorrow about this time I will deliver all of them slain before Israel. You shall hamstring their horses and burn their chariots with fire. In one day, God was going to defeat this great army. If you go back to when Israel first crossed the Jordan River, the first city they attacked was Jericho. And God unquestionably gave them that city against all odds. Then they came to Ai, a much smaller town that should have been an easy victory, but they lost. And that was because they weren't trusting in God. They had disobeyed. And when they repented, God turned that around and gave them victory again. And at Gibeon, their victory was ambiguous. They lost and won at the same time because they didn't completely trust God and they didn't ask for his opinion on a strange situation. Throughout all of these events, God has been fine-tuning Israel, teaching them to trust in him instead of in their own skill. They still had to show up to the battle and swing their swords, but God was the one in charge. God was the one who decided victory or defeat, and he did so based on their faith in him and their faithfulness to his commands. But here they are facing the greatest enemy they have yet faced. This is a coalition of a number of different cities with greater technology, far greater manpower, chariots and horses, which the Israelites didn't have any of. But God said it was just going to take one day, and he was going to give them victory. And then they would have all these chariots and horses that they could turn around and use against their other enemies. But God said, no, you can't have those. Those are mine. He said, burn all the chariots, hamstring the horses. This doesn't make a bit of sense from a normal human perspective. Why would God want that? It goes back to the same thing that caused their victory and defeat before. God wanted their trust in him, not in themselves. And if they had those chariots and horses, Israel would be tempted to start trusting in their own skill to defeat their enemies and forget that God was the real commander-in-chief and the real force behind their victories. Let me move over to Proverbs chapter 16, read verse 9. A man's heart plans his way, but Yahweh directs his step. We think we know what victory and success means, and we think we know how to strategize and get there. And it's a good thing to plan and to strategize and to work hard. But real success is predicated on faith in God and faithfulness to his commands. Going back up to verse 7, when a man's ways please Yahweh, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. And that was the case here. Peace takes many forms. In some cases, God makes your enemies be friends with you if you are faithful to God. In some cases, it means total defeat of your enemies. And that was the case with this northern coalition. Peace comes God's way, and even when that way doesn't make strategic or business sense. Is the business that you're in, does it require you to use questionable marketing tactics in order to be competitive? Do you feel like you have to be open on the Sabbath in order to compete with other businesses in the same field? Well, maybe you're in the wrong business, or maybe you need to trust God and do it his way, and God will make sure that the victory comes if you're in the right business. Read verse 8 in Proverbs 16. Better is a little with righteousness than vast revenues without justice. Without God, eventually victory, even if we think we're winning, turns into defeat. There is no real victory, no real success without faith in God and faithfulness to His commandments. This is Jay Carper from American Torah. Be blessed.